Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about a struggling nurse whose simple act of kindness shook an entire city. She lived in a small rented room in Lagos where the walls were thin and the landlord's voice was not. Every month felt like a race she was always losing. Still, she woke up before the sun, pressed her white uniform neatly, and tied her hair back with care. If life would not be soft with her, she would at least be neat with life. At the hospital, she moved quickly from one patient to another. She smiled even when her stomach growled. She spoke gently even when people spoke sharply. Some said she was too kind for someone who barely had enough for herself. That evening, after a long shift, she walked home slowly. The sky was turning orange, and traffic noise filled the air. That was when she saw him. A man lay near a roadside gutter beside a closed kiosk. His clothes were dusty. His beard looked forgotten. People stepped around him like he was part of the ground. "He drinks too much," a woman said as she passed. "Leave him," a man added. "Street people like that enjoy suffering." She paused. His chest moved strangely. Not like someone sleeping. Like someone fighting. She stepped closer and bent down. His skin burned under her fingers. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked. No reply. A small crowd gathered, but nobody bent down beside her. Advice came quickly. Help did not. She flagged down a tricycle. The driver frowned. "He will stain my seat." "I will clean it," she said firmly. She helped lift the man inside. She held his head on her lap as the tricycle moved through traffic. Dust rose behind them like a small storm. At the clinic, she spoke with urgency. She forgot she was tired. She forgot she was broke. Hours later, when the man finally opened his eyes, he looked at her with confusion, then something else. Something deep. "You," he whispered. She smiled softly. "Yes. You're alive." She thought that was the end of it. She did not know that this man was carrying a secret bigger than the street he was found on. And by morning, her quiet life would begin to change in ways she never imagined. The clinic was small but busy, the kind of place where hope and stress shared the same bench. She stood beside his bed, arms folded, watching the slow rise of his chest. The doctor had cleaned him up. Without the dust and dirt, he looked different. Not rich. Not poor. Just hidden. He would not have lasted till morning, the doctor said quietly. She nodded. Her heart felt heavy, but also calm. At least he was breathing. Then the bill arrived. She stared at the paper like it might shrink if she looked hard enough. The amount was not friendly. It was the kind that laughs at people with empty pockets. "Is he your relative?" the receptionist asked. "No." "Then why are you paying?" She gave a small shrug. "Because he needed someone." The woman blinked, then said nothing more. She paid what she could and promised to complete the rest after her next salary. It was a bold promise for someone already behind on rent. But she signed anyway. Later that night, he opened his eyes fully. The first thing he did was study the room. The second thing he did was study her. "You stayed," he said, voice low but steady. "Of course," she replied. "You almost scared us." A faint smile touched his lips. It looked strange on his serious face. "What is your name?" he asked. She told him. He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt. "And yours?" she asked gently. He hesitated. Just for a second. "Call me Daniel." She noticed the pause. She also noticed his hands. They were not the hands of a careless drunk. They were clean beneath the dirt, strong, steady. The next morning, she had to return to work at the hospital. Before leaving, she adjusted his blanket. "Rest," she said. "I'll come back later." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. But when she returned that evening, the bed was empty. Her heart skipped. She rushed to the desk. "The man from yesterday, where is he?" "He discharged himself," the receptionist said. "Left early. Very determined man." She was still weak. "He said he had important matters." She stepped outside the clinic and looked down the road. Cars passed. Hawkers shouted. Nothing looked unusual. But something inside her felt unfinished. She walked home slowly, unaware that somewhere across the city, men in dark suits were asking one question. Find the nurse who brought him in. The next morning, she woke to the sound of city noise pressing against her small window. The room felt smaller than usual. Her stomach growled, reminding her that breakfast was still a dream. She quickly dressed in her worn white uniform and stepped into the streets, the Lagos sun already making the asphalt shimmer. As she walked, she kept thinking about him. Daniel, the man who vanished from the clinic like smoke. Something about him didn't sit right. Not danger, exactly, but mystery. The kind that whispers behind your back. At work, patients called her name, some with tired voices, some with relief. She smiled and nodded, but her mind wandered. Who was he? Where had he gone? And why did she feel, strangely, that their story had just begun? During lunch, a young orderly approached her, glancing around as if the walls might be listening. "Did you notice anything unusual about him?" he asked quietly. "What do you mean?" she replied, biting into a small, hard roll she had bought from a street vendor. He lowered his voice further. "I heard whispers, he's not just a streetman. People are saying he has connections. Powerful ones. Strange ones." She frowned. "Connections. That doesn't concern me. I helped someone who needed it. That's all." The orderly nodded but didn't look convinced. Something in his gaze told her she might be underestimating the situation. Hours later, as she walked home under the soft glow of the setting sun, she noticed a black SUV parked quietly near her street. Its windows were tinted, the engine silent. Her pace slowed. A man in a dark suit stepped out, phone pressed to his ear. He looked around, eyes sharp. Her heart skipped. Something told her he wasn't lost. He was waiting. Daniel. Or someone like him. She didn't know which yet. But she felt a pull, a mix of curiosity and fear. That night, she couldn't sleep. The ceiling above her seemed smaller, pressing down. She stared at the cracks in the wall, remembering the way his eyes studied her in the clinic. The faint smile. The pause before he spoke his name. Every detail returned, sharp and alive. She whispered to herself, "What did I get into?" Meanwhile, somewhere far from her small room, Daniel moved with purpose. Meetings. Phone calls. Decisions. He was a man who belonged in another world, a world she had only brushed by touching him in that clinic. And little did she know, the world she knew, the streets, the hospital, her small rented room, was about to collide with his in ways she could never imagine. By the end of that night, she had made a quiet promise: if he needed help again, she would be ready. Even if it meant stepping into a story bigger than she could handle alone. The next morning, Lagos seemed louder than usual. Hawkers shouted, engines roared, and the smell of roasted plantains mixed with the exhaust. She hurried along, clutching her bag, thinking about the man who vanished, Daniel. His presence lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. At the hospital, her patients needed her, of course. Feverish children, tired mothers, and elderly men with trembling hands filled the small ward. She moved among them with practiced care, but her mind kept drifting back. Why had he left so suddenly? What important matters pulled him away from life or death so casually? During a brief break, she sat under a mango tree outside the hospital. She pulled a small loaf from her bag and nibbled quietly. That's when she noticed a commotion near the gate. A group of well-dressed men were asking questions. Their tone was polite but sharp, like every word carried a command. Her heart thumped. Something told her it was related to Daniel. She considered leaving, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. One of the men glanced toward her. His eyes lingered just a little too long. She felt the world shrink around her. She wanted to turn, to run, but instead, she stayed still, holding her breath. Later, she learned from a colleague that these men were not hospital staff. They asked about a patient brought in the previous evening. Questions about identity, background, and who had assisted him. Her stomach twisted. Somehow, her quiet act of kindness had attracted attention. Attention she wasn't prepared for. That evening, walking home felt different. The usual chatter of the street seemed sharper, more watchful. She clutched her bag tighter. Lagos had always been chaotic, but tonight, it felt like the city itself was leaning in, curious about her next move. Halfway down her street, she noticed a familiar figure leaning against a lamp post, Daniel. His clothes were neat now, clean and more expensive than street rags. He smiled faintly at her, that same strange, quiet smile that made her stomach flutter. "You're still here," he said softly. His voice was calm but carried weight. "I could ask the same," she replied cautiously. He stepped closer, but not too close. "I promised I'd come back," he said. "I needed to make sure you were safe." She raised an eyebrow. "Safe from what?" His smile faded for a brief moment. "From the world that doesn't forgive easily." She realized then that the man she helped was Northwest ordinary streetman. He had secrets, power, and influence far beyond her imagination. Yet, somehow, he trusted her, and that trust was a dangerous gift. By the time she reached her small room, her mind was racing. The city outside hummed, unaware, but for her, a story had begun, a story where danger and gratitude, kindness and mystery, would intertwine in ways she could never predict. The following morning, she woke with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. Her small room felt unusually bright under the rising sun, yet every sound outside, the hawkers, the vehicles, the distant shouting, seemed sharper, more focused on her. She dressed quickly in her uniform and left for the hospital, her mind replaying yesterday's encounter with Daniel. At the hospital, patients filled the wards as usual, but her focus was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the memory of his quiet warning about the world that doesn't forgive easily. She wondered if he meant enemies, powerful people, or some secret she couldn't yet see. During a lunch break, she stepped outside to the street and noticed Daniel again. He didn't approach this time. Instead, he stood at a distance, watching, his posture calm yet commanding. A sense of unease washed over her. How could someone so calm hold so much power? Back inside the hospital, whispers reached her ears. Staff spoke in hushed tones about a man seen near her neighborhood, a man asking about her, watching, and apparently connected to the stranger she had saved. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't imagined it. Someone was tracking her. Later that evening, she finished her shift and hurried home, thinking she might avoid attention by staying quiet. But as she rounded a corner, she saw him again, Daniel. He wasn't alone. Two men in suits flanked him, faces unreadable, serious. "You've been busy," he said, voice low, almost casual. Yet the words carried weight. "I'm just trying to live," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. "You helped me when no one else would," he said. "Now, I need your help again." She paused, confused. "I don't know if I can." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes but demanded attention. "It's not a choice. It's already happening." The street seemed quieter suddenly, as if the city itself had paused to listen. She realized that the man she saved was no longer just a man in need. He had plans, influence, and dangers she couldn't yet name. And somehow, she was pulled into it. She followed him, curiosity and fear mingling. With every step, the reality became clearer. Daniel's world was nothing like hers, yet he had trusted her. That trust felt heavy, almost sacred. By nightfall, she returned to her small room, heart pounding, mind racing. She knew her life had changed forever. A simple act of kindness had spiraled into a story bigger than her quiet world. The nurse who walked the streets, saving lives, had now been noticed by someone whose life was built from power, mystery, and secrets. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she thought, would bring answers, or questions she couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Lagos woke with its usual chaos, horns honking, vendors shouting, and the smell of fried yam drifting through the streets. She stepped out, careful to avoid the crowded spots, but her mind was elsewhere. Daniel's presence haunted her thoughts like a shadow that refused to fade. At the hospital, she tried to focus on her work, but every patient, every cough, every whispered complaint reminded her of the man she had saved. Something about him didn't fit with the life she knew. He carried an air of authority, even when he had nothing in his pockets. During a short break, she received a call. The number was unfamiliar. Hesitating, she answered. "Are you the nurse who saved Daniel?" A low, controlled voice asked. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "Good. Meet me tonight at the Lagos pier." "Alone?" The line went dead. Her heart raced. Questions flooded her mind. Who was this person? What did he want? And why the pier, so late, so dangerous? She spent the day trying to focus, but it was impossible. Each hour felt stretched, heavy with anticipation. By sunset, she had made a quiet plan. She would go. Carefully. She had to know what was happening. At the pier, the water reflected the orange and purple sky. Boats rocked gently, fishermen packed their nets, and the air smelled of salt and diesel. She saw him first, Daniel, leaning against a wooden post, waiting. He looked calmer than ever, almost casual, but his eyes were sharp. "You came," he said simply. "I had to know what's going on," she replied, voice steady even though her heart thumped. He gestured toward the water. "Everything you think you know about me is only the surface." Before she could ask more, a man stepped from the shadows. He was tall, dressed in black, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses even as twilight fell. "We've been watching," he said, voice like gravel. She froze. Danger was close, real, and immediate. Yet Daniel's hand on her shoulder was calm, grounding. "You trusted me once," he said softly. "Now, I need you to trust me again." Her mind raced. This was no ordinary life she had walked into. Helping a man on the street had led her into a world of secrets, danger, and power far beyond what she had imagined. As the night fell over Lagos, the water reflected their shadows, long and twisting. For her, this was no longer about saving a stranger. It was about stepping into a story that could change everything, including her own life. Night had fully settled over Lagos, but the city never really slept. The streets hummed faintly with distant traffic, the occasional shout, and the smell of grilled meat lingering in the air. She walked behind Daniel carefully, her uniform slightly wrinkled from the day's work, her hands clutching her bag. Every step made her pulse faster. "Why here?" she asked quietly. "Why not somewhere safe?" Daniel's eyes reflected the pier lights. "Safety is a relative word. What matters is honesty and courage. You showed both yesterday. That's why you're here." She frowned, trying to understand. Everything about this man seemed layered, hidden under calm words and faint smiles. And yet, she found herself listening, drawn in despite the unease twisting in her stomach. They reached a small, secluded warehouse by the waterfront. Its paint was chipped, rust climbing the walls like veins. Inside, men in suits were gathered around tables with papers, phones, and maps. Their faces were serious, alert. None spoke until Daniel motioned to her. "This is why I came back," he said softly. "Because you see things differently. You care when others do not. I need that." Her eyes widened. "Care? What do you mean?" He gestured to the papers and maps. This is bigger than the street. Bigger than the hospital. There are people, powerful people, doing things most would ignore. I cannot face it alone. She swallowed hard. Fear and curiosity collided. She had never imagined her life would involve shadows, secrets, and silent battles in the city at night. You're asking me to help? She whispered. Yes, he said, tone gentle but firm. Because your heart is stronger than your fear. She looked around at the men in suits. Their attention was sharp, intense. Their trust in Daniel was absolute. She realized then that he was not the man lying on the street. He had power, influence, and a reach that she had only glimpsed in whispers. And somehow, he had chosen her. Her mind spun with questions. Why her? Why now? Could she even handle it? Yet, deep down, she knew she could not walk away. That simple act of kindness had pulled her into this story, and there was no returning to her quiet life. By the time they left the warehouse, the city lights reflected off the water, casting long shadows. She walked beside Daniel, silent, but determined. She did not know what was coming next, only that the night had changed everything. The following day at the hospital, life moved as if nothing had changed. Children cried. Mothers whispered. Doctors called out names. But she felt different. She moved through the wards with careful steps, her mind replaying the night at the warehouse. Daniel's world pressed against her reality, and it made her pulse quicken with both fear and curiosity. During a break, she sat under a mango tree, the same one she often rested beneath. She couldn't stop thinking about the men in suits, the maps, and Daniel's calm voice. Why had he trusted her? Why had he chosen her? Questions swirled, refusing to settle. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Meet me tonight at the old bridge. Answers await. Her heart skipped. The city felt smaller suddenly, tighter, as if it was guiding her toward something she could neither ignore nor fully understand. Night fell, soft and heavy. Lagos streets glowed with yellow light from street lamps, neon signs, and the occasional flicker of a moving vehicle. She arrived at the old bridge, the river below dark and silent. Daniel was already there, leaning against the railing, his silhouette calm, almost casual. You came, he said. I had to, she replied. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. He motioned to the water below. Everything you think you know about me is only the surface. There's more, deeper than the streets, the hospital, even this city. She felt a shiver run down her spine. Deeper. He nodded. And it will affect you. Your life, your choices, everything. A soft sound of footsteps made her glance back. Two men emerged from the shadows, alert but respectful. Daniel's calmness remained unchanged. They are here to protect you. And to guide us. She swallowed. Her small life, once simple and predictable, had spun into a world of secrets, power, and danger. Every choice now carried weight. Every step mattered. They stood silently, watching the dark river. She realized that helping Daniel once had set in motion a chain of events that could not be reversed. She could run, she could hide, but her life was now intertwined with his in ways she couldn't yet measure. Are you ready? He asked softly. She nodded, though her heart raced. The city around them felt alive, watching, waiting. And she knew that tonight marked the true beginning of her journey, a journey far beyond the hospital walls, beyond Lagos streets, into a world she had never imagined. The next morning, she woke to the usual chaos of Lagos streets, but her mind was anything but usual. Every horn, every shout, every vendor's call felt sharper, reminding her that life had changed. Daniel's world pressed closer every day, and she could no longer pretend her life was ordinary. At the hospital, patients demanded her attention, yet she drifted through the wards, thinking of last night. The bridge. The men in suits. Daniel's calm voice. His eyes, always observing, always calculating. She wondered what he had planned next. During lunch, a nurse whispered to her, "Did you hear? Some powerful people have been asking about a man who showed up at your clinic last week." She stiffened. "Who?" "Daniel," the nurse replied softly. "They say he's not what he seems. They're looking for him, and for anyone who helped him." Fear crept in, but alongside it came resolve. She had chosen to help once. She could not run from the consequences. Her heart, however anxious, knew that stepping back now would be the easy choice, and she had never been one for easy choices. That evening, she received another message. "Meet me at the old warehouse. Urgent." Her stomach tightened. She didn't know what awaited her, but the pull of curiosity and responsibility was stronger than her fear. She walked the streets cautiously, each step heavy with anticipation. At the warehouse, Daniel was already there, waiting. The men in suits moved like shadows around them, silent but alert. Papers, maps, and phones littered the tables. "You did well today," he said quietly. "But tomorrow, things will demand more." Her brows knitted. "Demand more? What do you mean?" He looked at her seriously. "You helped me once. Now, you will help with decisions that could affect many lives. You must understand the stakes. This is bigger than you or me, it is bigger than the street, bigger than the hospital." She swallowed hard. Her life had turned from quiet hospital halls and small rented rooms into a story of power, mystery, and danger. Yet, despite the fear, she felt a strange strength. Helping Daniel had given her courage she never knew she had. As the night deepened, Lego stretched outside the warehouse, alive, oblivious to the silent decisions being made inside. She realized that her world and Daniel's were now inseparable. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had grown into a chain of events she could never undo. She looked at Daniel, nodded slightly, and whispered to herself, "I'm ready." The night had fallen fully over Lagos, painting the streets with pools of yellow and orange light. She moved carefully, her uniform slightly dusty from the day, heart racing with the weight of everything she had learned. Daniel walked beside her, calm as ever, yet the air around him carried authority she could feel but not name. They reached the waterfront, where the river reflected the city lights like a scattered mirror. Daniel stopped and looked at her. "Everything you've seen, everything you've done, it led to this moment," he said. Her hands tightened on her bag. "And what moment is that?" "The moment where choices matter," he replied, voice low. "Where your kindness becomes more than just a single act. It becomes a bridge." She frowned, unsure what he meant. Before she could ask, a small boat approached, carrying two figures who stepped carefully onto the pier. They nodded at Daniel. He gestured to her. "These are allies. People who understand the stakes." She looked at the men. They were serious, alert, the kind of faces that belonged in boardrooms or secret meetings, not on streets filled with vendors and children playing. And yet, somehow, they had come for her as much as for him. A sudden breeze carried the smell of salt and fuel. The city behind them felt distant, almost irrelevant. In front of her was a world she hadn't asked to enter, yet one she could no longer leave. Daniel turned to her. "You helped me once when it mattered. Now, I'm asking you to continue, not because you owe me, but because you have the strength to make a difference." She swallowed, the weight of the night pressing on her shoulders. Fear tried to creep in, but she pushed it aside. Her heart had carried her this far, and it would carry her further. She nodded slowly. "I'll do it." A faint smile crossed his lips, that same quiet smile she had first seen in the clinic. He did not say more. Words were not needed. The river, the lights, the city, they all seemed to pause, acknowledging the choice she had made. By the time she returned to her small room, Lagos hummed around her, unaware of the quiet story unfolding in its streets. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Her life had changed. A simple act of saving a man on the street had become a journey into power, mystery, and trust. And though she did not know what tomorrow would bring, she understood one thing. Kindness can ripple far beyond what anyone expects, and sometimes, it can change the world, starting with one act, one choice, one night.